Hey, LarkenRose here. There are only 2 events that I am now scheduled to be at in person. And I may not add any more after that. And I shall explain why. Now, you don't have to give a crap where I'm going to be. That doesn't really matter. But it relates to something that I think does actually matter. First of all, the first place I'm going to be a week from Saturday is the LA screening of the Jones Plantation. I'll be there. The director will be there. A bunch of cast members will be there. A fabulous time will be had by all. So there are still tickets for that, and the description below will show where to get them. The second and only other thing I'm scheduled to be at is Anarchapulco in February, basically a month from right now. I think it goes from 11th to the 16th. Not entirely sure. But below you will see the links for where to get tickets to be at that, if you feel so inclined to do such a thing. Now, oddly, the talk that I'll be giving at Anarchapulco relates to why I'm probably not going to do that many or any more public appearances at sort of pro-freedom movement type things. And it's not so much a complaint about the movement, although, I've had lots of them going for many years. But when it comes to people who have basically escaped the cult of statism, they've outgrown the idea that anybody has the right to rule them and the concept of political authority and all that fun stuff. It's very easy to feel like the world is then divided into 2 people. The weird fringe kook freak extremists who think they own themselves and shouldn't be violently dominated by parasites, and the rest of the world that still seems to believe they need to be violently dominated by political liars and crooks. And then they bicker about which crook should be on the throne and whether they're left or right or Democrat or Republican makes no stinking difference to me. They're still just bickering over who should boss them around and steal their stuff. That's like that entire discussion is anti-freedom and pro-slavery. That's just bickering about whose slave you want to be. So, when it comes to voluntarists or anarchists, is the scary word for it, it is easy and it's understandable and it's natural to sort of think in terms of, well, it's us against the whole world. And in a practical sense, it is, because almost everybody else in the world advocates that you be forcibly extorted and dominated by a political ruling class. Anybody who votes advocates that you be subjugated by political parasites. They also advocate that they be subjugated too, which that's a bad idea too. But if somebody just decides that they want to be dominated by lying crooks, okay, just don't decide that I need to be too, just to make you feel better about cheering for your own enslavement. But when it comes to people who have escaped statism, it's easy for them to sort of get into the mindset of, well, here's the club of people who've escaped that. And it's us against the world. We're the ones who understand that statism is bogus and insane. And that's totally true. But when you start to view the rest of the world as the enemy in need of either being defeated or at least ignored and avoided, again, that's understandable, but that doesn't accomplish anything. So many of these pro-freedom movements or organizations or events, they become, well, there is a positive aspect. In fact, the main reason I go to those things is to meet like-minded people and chat and make connections and have fun discussions about stuff with people who I know for the most part don't advocate that I be subjugated by political parasites. And that in itself is fun. Now, does that fix the world? No. Does it do anything to fix the world? No. I mean, every once in a while you'll make connections that end up making some project happen that may not have without that. So that's fine. They can sort of enable the whole networking and stuff. But as soon as an event or an organization or a chat group or something is just about people commiserating about how the rest of the world doesn't understand, that's not fixing anything. So to me, the things that matter, and you may have noticed that this is my focus and has been for years, is about, like, when I'm talking to voluntarists, the most useful thing I think I can do is to try to help them be better communicators with the rest of the world, so that they can reach out to the rest of the world. And that's why I made Candles in the Dark. And then later, the thing called Making Anarchy Mainstream. I'll have links to them below if you haven't heard of them. And then the other reason I do it is to give talks and presentations, whatever, that aren't actually directed at people who already understand this. They're directed at the rest of the world. So when they get put up on YouTube, other people can hear it. Now, for example, at the last Pork Fest up in New Hampshire, I gave a talk in front of a bunch of people who, a bunch of them were voluntarists and a bunch of them weren't. I don't know the exact breakdown, but my talk there was mainly focused on the people who still believe in government and imagine themselves to be pro-freedom, and are still falling for the trick of, well, this political guy, he opposes these authoritarian things I don't like, and he's running for office. Oh, you mean he's trying to acquire a position from which he can forcibly dominate you and steal your money? Well, yeah, but he doesn't like the warmongering, or he doesn't like the forced medical crap, or he doesn't like... Okay, that's fine, but he doesn't believe in freedom. He just may oppose particular kinds of authoritarianism and absolutely believes in other kinds of authoritarianism and wants to be the ones holding the reins of the monster that's going to inflict those on you. And that's true of Vivek Ramaswamy, however you say his name. He's absolutely a statist and absolutely an authoritarian. RFK Jr., absolutely a statist, absolutely an authoritarian. What's her name? I think, wasn't she scheduled to talk there and then didn't? I don't even remember her name. That's how much I pay attention to politics, because these people do not advocate freedom for you. They oppose certain kinds of injustice, and they want you to mistake that for them opposing authoritarianism in principle, and they totally don't. So, when I gave my talks there were actually 3 of them. They were all either focused on getting voluntarists to figure out how to try to do outreach and talk to the rest of the world in a way that, like, offends them less and gets through to more people. And then also focused on talking to the people who still think that political action and freedom can ever go together. They can't. And I've explained a million times why they can't, so I won't get into that now. But my talk coming up at Anarchapulco, which, if you can be there, I highly suggest you be there, is titled, see if I can get my own title right, I think it's titled, When the World Grows Up. And it mainly will describe the fact that, and all the ways in which humanity, as long as it believes in government, is training people to think like children. If there's a problem, their mentality is usually, dial 911. Like, if there's an immediate, something scary's happened, call the authorities. And if there's a longer term problem, what are we going to do about, let's vote for some political parasite to steal all our money and boss us around and fix the problem by way of big nanny state or big daddy state violently imposing the solution on humanity. And until people get out of that mindset, they're just going to keep going around in circles. They're just going to keep bickering a big parasitic ruling class to make things work. Growing up requires them to realize there's just people here. There's no superhuman benevolent entity that's going to fly down and save the day and impose upon humanity justice and fairness and yada, yada, yada. But part of my talk is actually going to address people in the movement, because I think there are a number of ways in which people in the movement also kind of need to grow up. And I don't just mean, like, about their emotional stability, but about the way they think about things. And the main thing I wanted this video to focus on is the fact that if you're not in the mindset of trying to help other people escape the authoritarian statist lies they were taught, you're doing pretty much nothing to fix the world. Now, are you obligated to fix the world? No, not really. If people are just like figuring out ways to live as freely as they can themselves and, finding a place off grid or doing all that stuff, is there something wrong with that? Nope. More power to them. Yeehaw. But you're never all the way free until everybody gives up this cult. It's sort of like if you grew up in some, tribe that's throwing people into a volcano to appease the volcano gods. Unless you can all the way escape the tribe, it doesn't really help you to go, yeah, that's ridiculous. They believe in this stupid volcano god. They're totally wrong. So I'll just live over here. Well, okay, you'll live over there until they throw you into a volcano because they still believe that stupid crap. Most of the world still believes the stupid crap known as politics and government and law and authority and all that fun stuff. And until that's no longer the case, nobody's really free, because having to hide somewhere and hope the parasites don't find you, that's not freedom. Now, it can be more free than a lot of other people in their day-to-day lives if you manage to pull it off and don't get noticed and become pretty self-sufficient or make a network of people. And I'm not at all against people doing that stuff, but as long as the organizations and events and stuff are focused on themselves and discussing things they care about and telling each other how right they are and how wrong the rest of the world is, to me, that's not really doing anything that accomplishes anything. Now, a lot of events are about outreach, but a whole lot of them aren't. And a lot of these events, most of what they do, even at the reason I didn't go there for a zillion years, even at PorkFest, for years, a lot of it was about political stuff. Well, if we vote this guy in and we have this guy and the Libertarian Party and blah, 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 blah. It's you're just making noise that reinforces the statist mythology, as if elections and legislation are legitimate and valid. Basically, you're whining to the people who throw people into the volcano to try to have them throw people in less often, instead of saying, there's no volcano god, you psycho. What you're doing is evil. We all the way oppose it. Now, there are people who do that up in New Hampshire too. But when the movement or when organizations or when events aren't focused on the thing that matters, which is freeing human minds, to me, that's just sort of mostly frustrating and a waste of time. Now, sometimes it's a fun waste of time, because it's fun hanging around a bunch of people who are already voluntarists and we get along and have lots to talk about. So I'm not saying it's destructive and horrible. It just doesn't really accomplish anything, even though it can be fun for the people there. The trouble is, the more it's fun for the people there, oh, I found my people, I found my group, and we're going to chat and we're going to meet and we're going to get together. Okay, that's cool. And I think it's really important that anybody who is a fringe weirdo who doesn't think there should be a ruling class should know some people and have people they can talk to so they don't feel totally isolated and alone and frustrated and all that. But if that's so comfortable for you that you're hiding in your little cocoon, you're not doing anything to fix the world. And fixing the world requires helping to free other people's minds. Now, like I get into in Candles in the Dark, you can't make anybody believe in freedom. You can present things in such a way that they have the best opportunity to free themselves if they choose to, but you can't force them to choose to. And that's what Candles in the Dark is all about. And a lot of stuff I talk about. But the us versus them mentality, when it comes to voluntarists versus statists, and we're still massively outnumbered, again, completely understandable. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you think that way. That's natural. It's understandable. It makes sense. It's justified. Because what you advocate is for them to be free, and what they advocate is for you to be enslaved. yeah, being bitter and mad at them and viewing them as kind of the enemy makes perfect sense. I'm not saying you're bad for viewing it that way. I am saying that if you remain stuck in that mindset and you're not trying to help them get out of the lies that they're under, you're not fixing anything. You're not accomplishing anything. And this is my biggest beef. If you look back going hundreds of years, there have been very eloquent, brilliant authors writing all sorts of stuff going back centuries. You know, you can go back to Voltaire and you can go back to Etienne de la Boétie and, Frederick Douglass and Bastiat and Lysander Spooner. And there's so much great stuff that's been written. And if you ask the average person, hey, what do you think of what Etienne de la Boétie had to say about servitude and subservience to a ruling class? Literally 999 out of 1,000 of them are going to go, who? What? Now, does that mean that those writings were worthless? No. What it does indicate is that most of the most brilliant minds who were like way more eloquent, way better writer than I am, did not do a good job conveying that to the people who really needed to hear it, which is a huge challenge. It's not an easy thing to do. But that was rarely even their focus. They wrote on an intellectual and philosophical level that was targeting people who like to think about that stuff. Well, that's cool. And lots of people, including a bunch of you and me, have benefited by being able to read that stuff. Albert J. Nock and Rose Wilder Lane is an awesome one that even lots of pro-freedom people haven't heard of yet. But people who like to think about it and question stuff, learning this doesn't fix the world. And having an event happen where everybody gets around and talks to each other and then goes their merry way and isn't really making any impact on all the normal people out there, like, what does that accomplish? It can be fun. In fact, like, psychologically, it can be sort of important for the people who believe in freedom, but you're not doing anything to fix the thing that needs to be fixed for you to be free, too. And was it Harry Brown who wrote Living Free in an Unfree World? And it's funny because I partly agree and I partly object to the notion. Because if somebody's goal is, all right, I'm going to arrange things to minimize how much and how often the mindless thugs of the state harass me. Good. An outstanding goal. 100% moral, 100% legitimate, justified, understandable, best of luck. I hope the parasitic bastards never give you any trouble whatsoever. However, you're still having to avoid them and hide from them and arrange things in certain ways to try to minimize them messing with you because they still exist and the rest of the world still thinks they're legitimate. You're not all the way free until the rest of the world gives up this crap too. And that sucks. It's totally unfair. If you understand that you own yourself, you shouldn't have an obligation to convince the rest of the world of that before people should leave you alone. People should already leave you alone. They should already not commit aggression against you. But if they don't understand that and they still vote for people to commit aggression against you, like hiding and trying to avoid it, that isn't freedom. It relative to what a lot of people do, like inside the machine where they're getting robbed and controlled at every turn, it can be on a day-to-day basis a lot more free, and I'm not against that at all. But the reason I want to basically not do more public appearances and events is because there's tons of stuff I want to focus on. These days I'm focused a lot on the mirror because somebody now made it so I have a lot more time to focus on that. I should really put I suck at promoting myself. I'm going to put the Patreon link below. I get like a little bit a month from Patreon, but somebody else made it so I've actually been spending a lot of time now working on the mirror again. For those who don't know what that is, you can look it up somewhere else or I'll put the link below. But that is entirely about reaching out to the rest of the world. And then I have Candles in the Dark, which is about teaching voluntarists how to talk to the rest of the world. And then I write books. And we made the movie, The Jones Plantation. And I wrote the Jones Plantation novel. And The Iron Web and The Most Dangerous Superstition and What Anarchy Isn't, the little pamphlet thing, and How to Be a Successful Tyrant, and which I'm working to try to get the second edition because that's been out of print for ages. But I watch people trying to find their place within this little niche crowd. And it's like, well, within the movement, this is a big name. It's like, okay, that's fine. Lots of people who already don't believe in government go, rah, 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 I really like what he has to say. Cool. And some of them do that to me. Okay, cool. I don't give a crap how popular you are among people who have already escaped the cult of statism. Like, that's cool. Good for you. And if you're making $1 bazillion, cool. Way to go. But if your focus becomes pandering to people who already understand this stuff, yeah, okay, you can make money and you can have fun and whatever. You're not fixing the world. You're not doing anything to free the people who still aren't mentally free. You're just commiserating with the people who already are. Now, I'm by no means describing everybody. There are a lot of people, like Michael Malice has been out all over the place getting these ideas out there and talking about his book and stuff, and that's outstanding. It's really cool to see him on a bunch of shows, like with Jordan Peterson. That, I will admit, that was a very frustrating interview to watch when Peterson interviewed Malice, because, and I almost never have this complaint of Jordan Peterson, but I wish he would have shut up and let Michael talk more, because Michael has a lot to say, which is worth saying, and he's good at saying it. And I think a lot of it was Jordan Peterson trying to process things in his own head so much that, you know, he was talking way more than his guest. And he rarely does that. I've hardly ever seen Jordan Peterson do that. But it was frustrating that Michael Malice didn't have more of a chance to say stuff himself. So that was annoying. But he got on Jordan Peterson, and he's been on with Rogan and Jimmy Dore and all over the place. That's outstanding. And the fact that normal people are out there watching this and going, wait, anarchy? Isn't that chaos and mayhem? Oh, no, this guy says it just means no rulers. Huh. The fact that there are people doing that, that is my entire focus. Now, there's lots of people who are way better at getting themselves out there than I am. Michael Malice being one of them, as demonstrated by the shows he's getting on. Good for him. But his focus is still to talk to the rest of the world. It isn't to just commiserate in our little club. And I get frustrated by how much the groups and the chats and the movements and the events and the organizations are sort of focused on themselves. And that's why currently my plan is basically to work on things like the Mirror. And I can't even count how many more books I'm up to that are in the works, because I'm constantly having new ideas. Books for the rest of the world, not for, and like Jones Plantation, the novel and the movie, it was funny because the director and I have gone back and forth in that, like, Andrew is really happy to have a movie that our people, like anarchists, can watch and go, yeah, that's awesome. And I like that too. But to me, that matters a billion times less than here's a thing that might make lots of those people out there start to think about stuff and start to reconsider things and start to question things. Because as much as it's fun for us to commiserate, that is what we have to do to make the whole world give it up. And in the case of Jones Plantation, the fact that it takes place on a slave plantation is a very convenient parallel. Because for the abolitionists to sit around in a dark room somewhere and say slavery is horrible and evil, okay, good, yeah, commiserate. But until you get enough other people to recognize that, it's still going to stinking happen. And so they did. They reached out and they did a whole bunch of things, whether it was, you know, Underground Railroad trying to sneak people out or, you know, trying to spread the message and all that. They did it by talking to the normal people. And as a asocial, I have to keep correcting myself, as an asocial introvert who would be perfectly happy to just hide in a room somewhere like this and write music and write books and stuff, like, I can totally relate to not wanting to talk to the normies. But that's not really an option if you actually want the world to move in the right direction. Now, you don't even have to talk to them in person. There's a bunch of other ways to spread the truth. But you have to have the mindset that the normal people need to be the focus of what we're doing. The people who are already on our side don't need to be the focus. They already aren't in the cult of statism anymore. And they can have little things they agree about and disagree about and nitpick about things and fine, which a lot of that I actually like. I think people should discuss the details and principles and stuff. I'm not in the crowd that says, well, let's just pretend we get along and agree about everything if we're sort of generally on the same page. No, let's talk about the finer points and do that. But at the same time, we need to be talking to the rest of the world. And too much of the focus of too many pro-freedom people is just about sitting around saying how dumb and clueless everybody else is and how hopeless it is. And I still see that all over. Like, oh, if anybody out there doesn't understand it yet, then it's totally hopeless. I'm just going to hide in with my little group over here and not talk to anybody. It's like, that is the perfect attitude to have if you want to help out the worst people in the world who are trying to dominate humanity. Is just say, well, they're all hopeless. All the people who don't recognize slavery as evil, there's no point in reaching out to them. So us abolitionists should sit in a dark room somewhere and tell each other how right we are. Okay? And you are that right, and they are that dumb for not recognizing that slavery was evil, but you still have to talk to them. You still have to reach out to them. Thankfully, they did. The abolitionists changed the world by getting normal people more and more to go, yeah, this is creepy and kind of horrible and evil. A lot of the world is sort of yeah, it's an ugly thing to look at, the whole slavery thing, but oh well, I guess that's how things are. And this little minority of troublemaker weirdo freaks kept loudly saying, that's not how things have to be, and it's not how things should be. That's evil. That needs to end. And it was only them conveying that message to the rest of the world in, every way they could think of that made it work. And so I want to focus on the new version of that, which is, even when you call it political authority and legislation, one human being treating other people like property to be bossed around and subjugated and extorted, it's still wrong, even when you call it something else. Even when it's not open chattel slavery, it's not that violent, it's not that brutal, it's not that obviously evil, it's more subtle and deception and stuff, like Jones Plantation describes. But if we're not talking to the rest of the world, if the normal people aren't our focus, we're not really going to change anything. And so I've said it before, I'll end on this to offend people. There are a whole lot of normal people who still believe in government just because they always have. And they've been surrounded by other people who did. And they've never questioned it and they've never thought about it. But they're decent human beings who are nice to other people, and they're considerate, and they're generous, and they're trying to be kind. They just happen to believe in this stupid, insane, anti-human cult that makes them enablers of evil, but they're not trying, they're not knowingly trying to commit evil. And those people I can relate to a lot more than a whole lot of people who are voluntarists but obsessing over this stuff and bickering with each other and stuff, where it's okay, you understand that statism is bogus, which is awesome, but you're still not all the best people in the world, and some of you are just kind of insufferable and annoying and you're not doing any good, so I don't really want to have anything to do with you. And then there are a bunch of people who are about the outreach and trying to spread the message and trying to get the rest of the world to understand. But so again, you don't have any particular reason to give a crap whether I'm going to be at public events. Who gives a crap? I'm just a guy. But I would caution all of you against falling into the trap of, well, I have the people who agree with me, and that's all that matters now. I'm not going to worry about the rest of the world. I'm not going to try to talk to anybody or reach out to anybody. I'm just going to do my thing with the people who already agree with me. Okay? You can do that as long as you can get away with it until the people who massively outnumber you, who believe in authoritarianism, send their tanks into your living room. Something, hopefully not something that dramatic, but one way or another, if most of the world believes in authoritarian domination, sooner or later you're going to get stomped on. Unless you're really good at like hiding in the woods in the middle of nowhere somewhere. But I don't want people who believe in freedom to have that be their only option. And that is their only option until the rest of the world changes. So I'm still going to be focused on the seemingly insurmountable challenge, which is not insurmountable, of getting the rest of the world to accept freedom too, and to understand it, and to choose it for themselves. And yes, it's a tall order, but it's the thing worth doing. And to me, a lot of this stuff that has nothing to do with that and is just about people who already think this, interacting with each other, most of that just isn't really worth doing, if you ask me. And so I, for the most part, won't be doing it. I'll be focused on outreach and stuff. So anyway, that's my babbling. Again, there are still tickets available for the January 20th screening in LA of the Jones Plantation. Jones Plantation novel is now out. It looks like this. If you go to thejonesplantation.com, you can buy it there. You can also buy it in bulk. And feel free. We are all in favor, me, and the people who paid to have this printed, of people buying a bunch and selling it themselves and underbidding us and making money off of it by buying the book in bulk. So by all means, do that if you feel so inclined. And then I will be at Anarchapulco giving a talk sort of related to what I was just babbling about today, but it covers a bunch of other things. And, yeah, so if you can make it to Anarchapulco, do that. And below will be the description of how to get tickets to the LA screening, get tickets to Anarchapulco, which is basically a month from now, and all the other things I mentioned. I have to sort of bite my tongue to not be too mean to all the pro-freedom people who have been in this for like 5 minutes and go, it's hopeless. I can't get through to the rest of the world. I'm just going to hide over here. Just having done this for 27 years and having, along the way, lots and lots of people telling me that in one way or another I helped contribute to them escaping statism. Like, if you give up after 5 seconds and go, oh, it's hopeless. I learned this stuff, got really interested, talked to my neighbor, and he didn't want to hear it, so I give up. It's like, wow. You know, it's a really good thing the abolitionists didn't have that attitude. Well, I told a few people that slavery is really bad, but they said, screw you, so I give up. I'm just going to hide in a basement and commiserate with some people. So it's ironic to me to see how many pro-freedom people are so willing to so easily give up and not talk to anybody when never in the history of the world has there been a better opportunity to spread these ideas and be more effective than ever in history with less risk to you than ever in history. Like, if you won't do it under those conditions, you wouldn't ever have done it. Like, for a lot of human history, if you came out and said, the king is full of crap, he has no right to rule us, you get sliced up in pieces and, like, put up on display. Now, you don't. And now we have the internet, so you can do things and spread things and talk to people. And a hell of a lot of people are way more open to these ideas than they've ever been before. So as much as you may not want to hear it, and I understand why, we have to focus on the normies, the normal people. And instead of viewing them as the enemy and it's hopeless and blah, 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 View them as what I was and what almost all of you were, victims of a lie. Help them out from under the lie. And then they're not the enemy anymore. You know, it's the Matrix thing. Right now, if they're playing that game and believing that crap on a logistical level, they're kind of the enemy. On a practical level, but the only thing needed to change that is to help them recognize the lie that they were fed and help them to choose, hey, maybe like peaceful coexistence and self-ownership is a good idea. And if you can't do that now, here and now with the technology we have and the social and cultural situation as it is, with tons of people becoming disillusioned with the political circus, don't pretend you're like a brave, righteous crusader for freedom. We have the easiest task in the world right now compared to centuries and centuries of people resisting authoritarianism to be like drawn and quartered and tortured and stuff. Now it's just, I don't want to like talk to people because sometimes they disagree. Really? That's as brave and badass as we're going to be. Anyway, I ranted enough about that. But yeah, I'm going to focus on the normies because that's what matters. Getting them to understand the lie and escape the lie. Helping them to no longer be victims of the lie matters 1,000 times more for the future of humanity than having a fun old time with people who already are out of the cult of statism. So, for me, that's what I'm going to be doing. Yeehaw.